The following program, Live and Learn, is made possible by Aging Partners. Find out more on their website at agingpartners@lincoln.ne.gov.
I'm Lita Powell Drake, and today we're going to explore the book that won Nebraska, a wonderful book by Bob Greene called Once Upon a Town, The Miracle of the North Platte Canteen. And we have with us today the director of the North Platte Canteen. It's actually the Lincoln County Historical Society. Jim Griffin is with us today, and Rosalie Lippincott, who was one of the 15-year-old girls back in 1942, who welcomed the soldiers who came through on the train in North Platte, Nebraska. Stay with us.
I'm Tom White, and today I'll be talking with Keith Fickenshire and Ron Lechner about Lincoln's stately and inspirational Veterans Memorial Garden.
Patriotism. What comes to mind? Love for one's country, red, white, and blue, fireworks, flags, military service? I will be exploring all of that and more when I interview my guest, Gary Chalupa, Lancaster County Veteran Services Officer.
I'm Tim Francis with Live and Learn. Today we're visiting with Pyrotechnic Association of the Midlands.
This and more on today's Live and Learn.
Once Upon a Town, The Miracle of the North Platte Canteen, a book written by Bob Greene. This one won the One Book, One Nebraska Award last year. It's a fascinating story of how Nebraska women greeted the soldiers in World War II when the train stopped in North Platte, Nebraska to take on water. And I am so happy to have with us today, we're going to be telling the story. Jim Griffin happens to be the executive director of the Lincoln County Historical Society, the museum, and I keep calling it the North Platte Museum, but that's just a part of it, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. Yep, we cover all of Lincoln County and really the surrounding area that are too small to be able to have their own museum.
Well, how wonderful, and the fact that you have preserved this is really very special. And Rosalie Lippincott. She is an amazing woman who was one of the young girls
once upon a time
who welcomed the boys when they were coming through in North Platte, Nebraska on the train. And you were one of the cute little girls, age what at that time?
Well, the first visit I made to the canteen, I was 15. And then, of course, I continued on until I was 18.
Whoa. Well, did you put your name in one of those popcorn balls to give to the guys?
Lita, you know, I already had a hometown boyfriend, and so I didn't put my name in. And besides that, my father was very strict. And if he'd have found out I was putting my name in popcorn balls, I would have had to stay home.
Did you marry that guy?
I married him later. And we were married 62 wonderful years.
Yes. Well, I'm so glad you're here to tell this story. It is a wonderful story. And now, Jim, when exactly did the museum at North Platte finally say, we got to do something about the story of the canteen?
Well, from basically the very beginning of when they opened their doors, they had an exhibit, and that was in '76. The depot had already been torn down, and so they gathered the artifacts together that were remaining and made sure that they were preserved, so that in the future years they could have that really good collection of artifacts as well as tell that story.
How many, at guesstimate, how many men you think were served who came through the North Platte Canteen and got off the train? Do you have any idea over the course of time?
Well, it's going to shock you. 6 million were served. Yeah, 6 million were served.
Okay, so from 1941 until 1945?
April of '46.
Oh, that long?
Yeah, they wanted to...
51 months.
Yep.
And these women prepared food for all of those trains for that long a period of time?
And not one train was missed.
And never ran out of food.
That's right.
Never did anybody pay a cent for what they received.
That is a miracle.
You know, that is what made the North Platte Canteen different. Is that, first of all, that the troops weren't separated, officers or enlisted men. They all were welcomed. And then the fact that there was no charge
That's
for
right.
the food. And that was different. In other canteens, they sold the food.
Oh,
Also, no segregation. It didn't matter what color you were.
we were ahead of our times in Nebraska.
That's right.
The book, Bob Greene, Once Upon a Town, is very, very special, and Rosalie Lippincott has the first interview in the book. How did Bob Greene, the author, find you?
Well, you know, Lita, my sister lived in North Platte. And from the very beginning, she kept a scrapbook of newspaper clippings and pictures of the canteen. And so here, and it must have been about '01, that she sent me a clipping from the North Platte paper that said, Bob Greene wants to get in touch with volunteers who'd worked at the canteen. Well, I had a new computer, and I was learning to
Good
use
for
the computer.
you, Rosalie. Good for
And
you.
I wanted something to write about on that computer. I hadn't told my children about this canteen experience, so I wrote it on the computer, and I had this script
excellent.
all ready, and I put it in an envelope, and I mailed it to Bob Greene. His office got it, and he read it. He had his secretary call me and say, Bob Greene wants to talk to you. And we got talking on the telephone, and we talked for at least a half an hour. I said it was the first time in my life that I'd ever had anybody listen to what I had to say.
You mean your children didn't listen to you, Rosalie? Oh.
But anyhow, that's how Bob Greene happened to use my story.
The only thing that upsets me is that somebody from Chicago, I think Bob Greene, worked in Chicago Sun-Times, good writer, there's no question about that, but somebody from Nebraska should have written this story. But I'm thank goodness that Bob Greene did write the story, because it is a wonderful story. All right, you were 15 when you were out there first, and how old are you now?
Oh, Lita.
A woman who will tell you her age will tell you anything.
I soon will be 88. So we're thinking back 75 years or so.
Okay, look, we're going to take a look at some of the wonderful pictures. And I think the canteen opened Christmas Day 1941.
That's right.
Just right after the war, declared Japan bombed Pearl Harbor December 7, 1941. Then we declared war, and so on Christmas Day, tell us what happened, Jim.
On Christmas Day, they met down at the Cody Hotel, and they gathered some goods together, and they brought it over to the depot, and were out on the platform and met the first troop trains there. And so early on, they had to meet out at the Cody Hotel, but the picture we just saw is within a couple of months. They moved over right into the depot's lunchroom.
And all women having gotten this organized and got their food ready and there to welcome the boys. It was really quite remarkable. Now we're taking a look at the picture of the soldiers in the beds in the on the train. But you said that not many were actually in bunks.
No. Most of the time they were pretty crowded. In fact, some of them had to stand across the country. I know the Navy gave them more room than the Army did. They were better at that. And this could easily be a train, the hospital train as well. So.
I know, because it's very uncomfortable. And it took 3 days to get from the East Coast to North Platte, Nebraska. And the reason they were stopping, of course, was because it was a steam engine train, and they were taking on water at the time and greasing the wheels and checking everything out. So it was about a 15, 20-minute, half-hour stop.
Yep.
Not a half an hour. It's more like a 15 minutes.
Oh, fast.
Yeah.
They had to get off that train, come into the canteen. See, and the conductor on the train, the way I understand it, had alerted to the men, and they were ready to get off. And they just came into the canteen in swarms.
Well, and look at the Union Pacific Railroad tracks. Remember, this is a big city because the train is stopping there. And look at the guys are getting off right now. And then they would be greeted by
Platform girls.
Yeah. Oh, that's what they call the
Yes,
platform girls?
platform girls.
I wonder if they were wearing platform shoes. Oh, and the ladies who made the food. Now, tell us about that.
Well, you know, I made egg salad sandwiches because we had, from my town of Shelton, we'd taken a big crate of eggs and they needed to be peeled, and then the egg salad made with homemade mayonnaise a lot of times, Lita. But anyhow, I know for sure this happened because I have it written in a letter to my boyfriend. I made 20 bushel baskets of egg salad sandwiches and covered them over with a clean white tea towel, and then we put them under the table waiting for the men to come in to service people.
And I think there were about 9 trains a day, so there's a lot of people.
There could have been more than that.
And look at the proud women who are showing and displaying the food that they have made. Many of them killed their own chickens, made the chicken salad and sandwiches. And the lady in the middle, in the gang of the black, is there something unusual about her?
Well, you know, she is wearing a hat. And I thought, I'm surprised the rest of those ladies don't have hats on, because that was very common for the older. I didn't wear a hat, but I know the older ladies did, with aprons.
Oh, sure, lots of aprons. But now, all this costs money. Where did they get the money to buy all the food?
Well, most of it was donated by people. There was also a $1 a month club that people could donate to, and then there was also all kinds of fundraising going on by individuals.
And I understand there's a little boy who sold a shirt off of his back in order to raise some money for the canteen. Let's take a look at that picture now. The little boy raised $2,000 out there. Can you explain about what was going on at the time?
Well, basically what he did was he did various chores, but the main thing he did was he went to the local sale barn, and he would sell his shirt at the weekly cattle sale. And he said that it had happened multiple times during the sale until someone decided it was time for the sale to go on. And then he would go down to one of our local stores, and they would give him a new shirt to do this again with.
And that picture, or a comparable one, was in the Saturday Evening Post.
That's right.
That was very special. Little boy stepping up to the plate.
But you know, Lita, too, now, I know for sure when, like my town of Shelton, when we loaded up all the food that we were giving, that would include birthday cakes and pies and cookies, but we also had a cash donation that we took along.
And one of the ways in which they were able to raise some money was the ration coupon book. Any of you remember that out there?
We've got a few at the museum. They're pretty amazing. Oh, man.
My mother was in charge of ration books in my family.
You know, what's fun about those is trying to explain to kids that no, just because you had the stamp didn't mean you get the thing. You still had to buy it, but you also had to have the stamp.
And sometimes, you know, it'd be 5 stamps for an item.
And I think I have, well, no, I've just had those little, if you're buying something and using your ration book and you weren't using it, all of it, then you got these little coins. They are the smallest little blue coin or something. The blue coin, yeah. And so that could like make up until you had to use the next one. Isn't it amazing? I remember seeing those, but you actually used them, Rosalie?
Well, yeah, you know.
Everybody did, yeah.
Like I said, my mother was in charge of the ration books, but to buy a new pair of shoes,
when you think about maybe 9,000 men a day coming through, you can imagine in that canteen how full it was of soldiers. This next picture will give you an idea of how many were really enjoying. Look at that. Tell us about that, Rosalie.
Well, that's the image that I've carried all these years. Men in khaki, the navy blue uniforms, the ribbons on the chest. It was jam-packed full. you know, it happened so fast. They swarm in and grab the food and out they go.
And according to the book, you know, some of the girls, the young girls, not you, because you know, but some of the girls, you know, put their names in like the popcorn ball.
Lady, can I correct you just a minute? It wasn't the girls that put the names in. It was the mothers that they made the popcorn balls, and it was the older women that stuck the names of the girls in.
Well then they began, you know, soldiers are out there and began writing letters back and forth.
In the museum, there's a wedding dress that hangs that the wedding came about because a soldier found the name of the girl up in Tryon.
Ended up
popcorn ball.
2 Nebraska kids ended up getting married because of it. Yep.
Because of the popcorn ball.
Yep.
It's a wonderful story. Okay, we want more information about your great museum in North Platte.
You can visit our website at lincolncountymuseum.org. And then you can also see us on Facebook. And then if you want to call us, the phone number is 308-534-5640.
You want to say that one more time?
308-534-5640.
Now, the canteen is one part of the museum? Is
Yes.
that it? What else is in there?
Well, there's about 7 acres. And, and it consists of an entire western village out back of old buildings that we've saved from around the county. Dating from 1861 all the way up to about 1900. So not only are you going to get to see the canteen and the amazing story and see the only remaining artifacts that are out there, but you can come see the history of western Nebraska.
I'm so glad that we got the pictures.
Yeah.
So those of us who were, you know, too young to know about that or now too old, or some of us can remember.
I think they've done a wonderful job, though, setting up a replica of what the canteen looked and felt like.
Yeah.
It's
too bad that the Union Pacific knocked down the canteen.
You know, I haven't met a single person that's not upset.
Well, I think it was 1973, and I was out in North Platte racing down the river, the North Platte River, and you know, and that was the year that they took it down. I mean, but I didn't even know the story prior to that.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad the book it's well worth the reading, and if you want to know anything about Nebraska history, it is Once Upon a Town: The Miracle of the North Platte Canteen by Bob Greene, and it is a miracle. Jim Griffin, thank you for driving in all the way from North Platte fast to get here. Really appreciate that. And Rosalie, you just keep up. Just keep up. Thank you for sharing the memories and going to the extra effort to participate in the book. I mean, how special.
Thank you for asking.
My pleasure. Just a delight to have you here. And remember, folks, it's never too late to live and learn more about Nebraska history.
I'm Tom White. Here's a quote from Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. "It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth." My recent visit to the City of Lincoln's Veterans Memorial Garden reignited in me a deep sense of gratitude and admiration for those who have fought for us. My guests today are Keith Fickenshire and Ron Lechner, members of the Veterans Memorial Garden Advisory Committee. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And first of all, let me thank you for your service to our country and for the time and efforts on behalf of our veterans. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So first off, Keith, can you give us a bit of history of the Veterans Memorial Garden?
In 1988, Mayor Bill Harris, working in conjunction with the Vietnam Veterans of America Association in Lincoln, brought the Vietnam Traveling Wall to Lincoln and displayed it in what was then a ballpark. And in the ensuing week, about 80,000 people came to see it. And that massive turnout forever changed the perception of that site. It became literally hallowed ground in the city of Lincoln, and there was a conscious effort then to build upon that momentum, and that has resulted in the garden.
That's great. And as far as the original Memorial Avenue, that was.
It was a street. The original Memorial Avenue was a street not far from Veterans Garden, but it contained one memorial, which we since transferred into the garden. It was the World War I Memorial. It's the first thing you see when you go in.
All right. And there are so many amazing and marvelous features in the garden. Let's talk about the entrance, the archway entrance. Can you discuss that, Keith?
The committee spent a lot of time deciding and designing what the entrance would be like, because we needed a front door that was as stately and as impressive and that would, as the garden is, and would set the tone for what visitors would feel when they entered the garden. And so we built the arch. It was actually, the bricklaying was done by donated labor, former bricklayers who've retired, and the other features of it, the electrical piece, was all donated. And so as you go through the archway, on one side of the arch are names of people who have donated money or time, and on the other side are names of organizations that have donated money to the support of the garden.
That's great. It's just, again, this garden impressed me to no end. But so now, Ron, can you tell us, like I said, there's so many amazing features in this garden. For instance, the bricks of remembrance seem to be a prominent feature in the garden. Can you tell us about
that's
those?
The biggest feature of the garden, other than the monuments themselves. But as you walk in, you have a surround feel to everything, and each monument has, for example, World War II and the Korean War. If you have a loved one that you purchased the brick for and put it in that spot, we'll put it in that monument itself as a forever remembrance of what they did. They don't have to be dead, they can still be alive. And I'm going to put a plug in here for my dad, because I purchased one from my dad last year, and that was so awe-inspiring because of his Korean War service and everything. So we have over 5,000 bricks in there, and we topped the 5,000 brick mark, and I think that's sensational, because it's just showing different avenues from World War II to the Vietnam to post-1980 to family members who have contributed, and to loved ones did things back here in the States while the war was going on and everything. So I think that's incredible. I could talk on and on about the garden and the bricks themselves, so I'll cut it off there, Tom.
Well, no, but the bricks, it's interesting that there are even some bricks that are pre-1900 that have Civil War veterans and Spanish-American War veterans, and that was it. I can't impress on people enough. Just go see this. Go see this place. It's astonishing. So, and now, Keith, can you tell us more about the walkway itself?
The walkway was designed to be a thought-provoking, solemn tour of the garden. It takes you on a winding path past all the memorials, all the bricks, all the brick holders, and it's the tree-lined, shaded area that you can pause and enjoy, or pay tribute to the various monuments that are shown throughout the garden. And the thing you'll find as you go through the garden is that every service organization, every branch of the military, every piece of the military that contributed to the maintaining of freedom in this country is recognized and supported in this garden. And so everybody can take a piece of the garden away and recognize themselves in that monument.
It really seems to be all-inclusive and all-encompassing as far as the...
It is.
Yeah, and so now, Ron, one of the things that I talked about with Keith and some of the other members of the council was about the emotions that people go through, and I know there's a connection between the benches and how people can, if they are overcome with emotion, there are benches throughout the garden that they can stop and
I'll just put this into that is, For example, there's one in front of the Vietnam Wall or the Vietnam bricks, and you'll see individuals over there sitting there crying because they'll remember their individuals that they purchased a brick for someone that's passed away, or they recognize someone they served with, and that person is no longer around. And it's just a place where you can sit and reflect and just pay homage. It's our way of showing respect for both those living and past, you know, veterans that have served. So.
Yeah, and there are different types of benches throughout the...
There's different types of benches that have sayings on them. For example, the Pearl Harbor one, we have one individual for the Tuskegee Airmen, which was sponsored by one Tuskegee Airman, and he got that all together for the Buffalo Soldiers. I think that was just something great. It's an individual thing, as he was passionate about that and was able to get that monument built, number one, to raise the funds, as well as the bench that sat there next to it. So,
yeah, it's really impressive.
It's impossible to go the walkway and not come out on the other side and feel sincere gratitude for the people that have defended freedom in this country. Just to tag a little bit onto what Ron said, I mentioned that all branches of the military service are represented in the garden, but then there's specific components like the medics, the canine, the canine corps, the women pilots, the DAV, the POW, and Special Forces, Seabees, Airborne, Strategic Missile Squadron, Pearl Harbor, Purple Heart, all of those, just as a sampling of what's recognized and paid, that you can pay homage to in the garden. It's the most unique garden of its kind in the country, as far as we know.
It's amazing, and I understand other cities have come to look at this garden. So now the other thing is that outside of the garden itself, there are a couple of other memorials, including a replica of the Liberty Bell. Can you tell us about that, Keith?
Well, just quickly, in 1950, the federal government gave every state an exact replica of the Liberty Bell. Unfortunately, Nebraska's was put in a National Guard warehouse and just left there. So it was in perfect condition when we got it a few years ago. And we built with donated money, we built the structure where it hangs, and every event we have in the garden, we ring the Liberty Bell. And it's very awesome. It's an awesome way to start each event.
That's great. It's so cool. And also, I would talk to, I think it was Beach is the head of the ground, not the grounds committee, but the landscape committee.
That's Jess Smith.
Oh, Jess is. I'm sorry, Jess is. And the star flower bed was another feature that is right in the center of the walkway. You were going to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's really awesome. Well, on the outside, before you go through the archway, is a little plaque that represents Russ's Market or B&R Foods, because if you would take an overlook of the garden, there's a star in there, and each point of those stars points to a different area. 1900 or pre-1900, the First World War, and then the second point is to the World War II. The third point of the star is to the Korean War. The fourth point is over toward the Vietnam, and then the fifth point of the star is to all those other, anything past that are post-1980 and anything past Vietnam. So that's what the points of the star is. So you might not see that as you actually walk into the garden, but that's what each one of those do. And B&R Foods is the one that supplies the flowers that go inside the star every year. So
it gives the overall effect between the walkway and the bricks and everything is just it's phenomenal. Now, sadly, there will inevitably be future memorials added. That's correct, right?
Yes.
So can you discuss that a little bit and how you'll go about that? Or
well, we've got one installed now, but the two pieces, as each monument gets full, instead of going to a brick, we're going to a plate, which should stand up longer. Mm-hmm. So now we're trying to mesh the two holders together to be in a more upright fashion to where you can view them on either side, and they fill in on either side. But because of it doesn't mesh up quite right, we're still working on that. So as time grows and the garden grows, we're going to do it and go to a different plate. So then the points of the star still be there to generally describe the garden itself, but as time goes on, we're going to run out of space, so we're going to have to grow in that fashion.
Okay.
And the other piece is that our landscape committee has very thoughtfully laid out a growth plan so that the sidewalks, the walkway will be extended, and they've made sure that every monument that goes in there will be built to the specifications that we have for that garden, and everything will add to the attractiveness and the solemnity of the garden. Nothing homemade, nothing will detract from it. And they have a plan where we can add several new memorials.
Well, thank you both so much. Thank you, gentlemen. And my guests today have been Keith Fickenshire and Ron Lechner, members of the Veterans Memorial Garden Advisory Council. I'm Tom White, and remember, it's never too late to live and learn.
What is your definition of patriotism? I'm Kristen Stowes, and my guest will be sharing his personal definition along with much more, as I welcome Lancaster County Veterans Service Officer Gary Chalupa.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Very happy to be here.
Could you please tell us what your military background is?
I served 23 years in the military, United States Army. Served overseas in Europe for 3 tours, did a short stint in Kuwait for 6 months, and did a couple of tours here in the United States. I ended up with my final assignment right here in Lincoln, Nebraska, working as an advisor to an Army Reserve unit.
Really, really, very distinguished career.
Thank you.
Wonderful. How long have you been at Lancaster County Veterans Services?
Just short of 20 years. I was fortunate that the position came open when I was retiring from the Army and applied and got selected.
Wonderful.
Love it. Love what I do.
Good, good. It shows.
Thank you.
Could you please tell us what your personal definition of patriotism is?
Well, a book definition is one's love of country or nation. And I guess that would fulfill my personal definition. But I think it's more important is what someone does with that love of country. A perfect example would be, do you exercise your right to vote? You know, it's those kinds of things. Do you participate in government activities of any type or that kind of thing? It's really more about what a person does to show that love of country. You know, do you stand during the national anthem? Do you remove your hat? Things like that.
So to you, patriotism is action.
It is.
Yes.
It is.
Yes, I understand. I know there are many reasons that young people join the military, but I was wondering, do you think young men and young women have patriotism in their hearts when they join, or is patriotism something that develops over time as they serve?
I guess that's really going to depend on the individual. Yes, some kids will join. I say kids. I guess I can call them that now.
They seem like kids.
With all this gray hair I have. But some kids will join because they want to serve their country. They want to somehow show that patriotism, if you will, or that love of country, and that's their way of doing it. Others will, I mean, there are a variety of reasons. You know, if you're needing a job and nobody's hiring,
certainly,
pretty much the services are, provided
yes.
you can meet their qualification standards. So, you know, there are always going to be various reasons why someone would want to serve. I can remember a time back in the 60s and 70s when if you were in trouble with the law, sooner than face the judge and take his sentence, he would give you the option of joining the service.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, gosh.
And usually that was the Marine Corps, nothing against the Marine Corps, but usually that was joining the Marine Corps. And kids would do that to, quite honestly, avoid jail. So,
yes, yes.
But I think everybody that leaves the service has that newfound sense of pride in nation,
yes.
and develops it over time.
Yes, yes, I'm sure that happens. Medals then are an outward visible sign of achievement, but what does receiving a medal truly mean to that individual?
It's recognition, recognition by the chain of command that you did something outstanding, something above and beyond the normal call of duty. It's recognition by your fellow soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, your fellow service members that you did something above and beyond, or
Yes.
something special, and are being recognized it, and to family members. I mean, it's a way of telling family that, hey, this is something special.
It's very meaningful for the family, is it not?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
especially you know, as kids look at their parents and their grandparents and say, wow, look what happened.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. Could it, in a time of war, could it be a morale builder for the?
Oh, most definitely. You know, again, it's that recognition, and the soldiers or the servicemen and women knowing that somebody in their chain of command cares enough to recognize them for their actions, especially in a combat environment like that.
Yes. Is a medal always awarded by a ceremony or a presentation, or is it awarded in different manners?
Most generally, it would be in a ceremony of some sort, and I know there are probably a large number of men and women who maybe didn't get the formal ceremony that they should have had because time, circumstances didn't allow it. I know that, I mean, you see the movie Patton. General Patton is going through the hospital ward presenting Purple Hearts. You know, that wasn't anything formal, but it was a presentation of sorts, and very meaningful, especially.
Yes.
But there wasn't the big ceremony. I know when I was on active duty, we would, anytime we were presenting an award, whether no matter what, we tried to do it publicly. We tried to give full recognition so everybody would see, because that is a big part of it.
And isn't it especially poignant when they're awarded posthumously?
Yeah, I mean, we've done a number of awards like that and been part of helping families get these awards for the deceased veterans and that. And I know we've contacted Congressman Fortenberry's office a number of times to see if he could participate in that presentation to the family, and through various senators that have served, you know, throughout the time. So we even then we still try and do something public to make sure everybody knows.
Certainly, certainly. Yeah. Well, we could talk forever on all of the different medals there
That's
are
true.
in the military service, but we do have a few examples of medals to show today from the branches of service. And if we will look at our screen, I believe we will see the National Defense Service Medal. If you could talk a little bit about this one, Gary.
Sure. The National Defense Service Medal is awarded to anyone who serves during a period of combat or during wartime, as recognized by the Department of Defense. It's a standard medal that's presented to everyone. And I guess this would be a perfect example of one that is not presented in a ceremony. You show up at basic training and they say, put it on.
I see.
So it just kind of goes on the uniform and then it begins there. But it's standard for all branches of service and just requires wartime service.
I see, I see. All right, then our next group are the Good Conduct Medals, and we have several from different military branches. Could you please tell us about these?
Sure. This is the Army Good Conduct Medal. Each branch of service has their own design for the Good Conduct Medal. The eligibility criteria might vary just a little bit, but pretty much, and now I see we switched to the Air Force, we'll get through all 5 branches, but they do show that the basic criteria is 3 years of good service. And each branch will receive one as they go through. This is the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the last one we'll have is the Coast Guard Good Conduct Medal. And again, it's 3 years of service. For those that serve less than 3 years, as long as they fulfill their full obligation, if they were a 2-year draftee, if they made the 2-year draft or serve their full term, they would still be eligible.
So these Good Conduct Medals are all a little different depending upon which branch of service you're in.
Yes.
I noticed the designs are different.
Designs are different, and the award criteria might vary just a little, but basically it's for good service. Yeah.
Okay, all right. We have a display on our table, and this is the Air Medal for Meritorious Achievement, excuse me.
Yes.
Could you please talk about this?
I sure can. The Air Medal is presented to anyone from various branches, and it is designed a little differently. What I want to point out first about this one is kind of unique is it actually comes in the display case that it was originally presented in. And a lot of times family members will have a copy of an award like this, but they won't have the display case. So that's kind of makes it unique. We also have the ribbon itself at the top of the case, the medal, which is normally worn during for formal affairs, and then at the bottom you'll see a real small lapel pin, and that can be worn on the civilian suit or civilian attire if people want to just kind of advertise the fact that they served, received an Air Medal. The Air Medal again is fairly standard as far as design throughout the various branches of service, but it's awarded based on a very variety of conditions. If you flew so many sorties in a specific type of aircraft, you would get an Air Medal. If it was a different kind of aircraft, you may have to fly more types of sorties. I think off the top of my head, I think it was 25 sorties in Europe, but in the same type of aircraft in the Pacific, because of the lack of air resistance, you would have had to fly more sorties than you would in Europe. So the award criteria, even with a very standard medal like this, would vary depending on where you served and the type of mission that you flew.
So it helps to know the background.
It does. It really almost, if you're looking for the criteria upon which it was awarded, you really have to know the background. Yes.
Well, this is a personal collection of mine. It was my dad's, and it's very special to me. So I thank you for filling me in on the information. It's very nice. Our next two pictures are the Bronze and Silver Stars. Please talk about these.
These are primarily awards for valor. The Bronze Star can be awarded for meritorious service. And normally on a person's discharge paper it would be indicated that it's a Bronze Star with V device or for valor, if in fact it's awarded under those criteria. And if it's for meritorious service, it just won't have the V device. And we didn't have an actual picture of one, but there would be a small metallic V right in the center of the award. The Silver Star is actually the third highest award that can be presented to servicemen and women, and is really based on strictly on valor. Too often times these are awarded posthumously, and sometimes are awarded as a downgrade, maybe from a recommendation for Congressional Medal of Honor, or an upgrade if a commander at a higher level felt that it warranted such an award.
So Gary, who decides if these medals have been earned?
Anyone in the military can recommend another service member for an award, and depending on the award itself, it's always a commander at some level that authorizes the award. The Army has a Meritorious Achievement Award, and that can be actually approved by a company commander. An Army Commendation Medal, and having served in the Army, obviously I know more about those than the other branches, but the Army Commendation Medal, as an example, has to be approved by a battalion commander and on up the line. Obviously, Congressional Medal of Honor takes congressional approval.
Are there medals that are awarded to non-combat military personnel?
Oh, most definitely, yes. The Army Achievement Medal, the Army Commendation Medal, there are a variety, large variety of medals presented. We have non-commissioned officer development ribbons. We have the Good Conduct Medal that we talked about. Those are for all soldiers, or all servicemen and women, not just wartime.
Well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
So everybody gets recognition no matter when they serve.
Yes. We have a couple of different websites to put on our screen. The first one is to help families in researching military records of their ancestors.
Yes.
Just a quick word.
You can go to the archives.gov. It's the National Archives Center, and through a series of links and providing some information, Copies of military records can be requested. Copies of awards can be requested. Families can actually submit a request and receive copies of all awards.
Okay.
It sometimes takes a while, but they can be requested and
wonderful.
received. Yeah.
It's wonderful to be able to have that resource.
It is.
And our next website is to help someone to research service memorabilia that they might have if they don't know the meanings behind the medals that they are finding.
Exactly. And a lot of times you'll dig through Grandpa's personal belongings or something, and you'll come across a number of medals and wonder what they are. You can go here to this website. You can find pictures. Once you have the picture, you'll find the name of the actual award, and then you can simply look that up on a separate website and find the criteria for award, maybe when it was presented, something unique if there is about it. So there's plenty of opportunity through the web to do that research.
Because it's wonderful to know what your
Yes.
ancestors have done.
You bet.
Our time is almost over here, so do you have any parting thoughts as we celebrate the 4th of July this month and continue to celebrate other wonderful patriotic holidays?
Yeah, I got to tell you, the 4th of July is probably my favorite because it gives everybody, not just servicemen and women, an opportunity to show their patriotism, but it gives everybody an opportunity to do that. It's kind of like be safe, be careful, but go have fun and celebrate this great nation of ours.
Yes, yes, and we should all do that proudly.
Yes, yes.
Gary, thank you so much for your service to our country.
Thank you.
And we congratulate you on your upcoming retirement.
Thank you, appreciate
well
it.
deserved.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Everyone, please take a moment to consider your own definition of patriotism. And please remember, it's never too late to live and learn.
I'm Tim Francis, your host today for this episode of Live and Learn. My guest today is Brian Schwink with the Midlands Pyrotechnic Association. You're a bunch of guys who like to have fireworks.
Correct.
And you like to do it correctly.
We do it legally. We follow all federal, state, and local laws, and we are fully insured when we do our shoots.
And this is something that's just kind of you organized over the last few years?
We actually organized our regional club in 2010. A good number of us in the club have been members of the PGI, the Pyrotechnics Guild International, for quite a few years, and that's actually how we got acquainted with each other.
What kind of, how do you guys use your fireworks when it's not that 10-day period around the 4th of July? What club activities?
Well,
how do you get away with it?
Because we do have a number of pyrotechnicians that are licensed to do professional fireworks in the state of Nebraska. We can then fill out a permit request, and we can get a fireworks permit for really any time of the year. The 10-day, or in the case of Lincoln, the 2-day period for fireworks really is for consumer-based fireworks that just anyone can go get.
So you're the more professional hobbyist.
Correct.
What's how big of a membership do you have regionally?
Our regional club has approximately 40 to 45 members. They range from South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, and Kansas.
And how often do you have your meetings?
During the nicer months of the year, we try to get together once a month. Actually, we have some meets in the middle of winter as well. Some of them have been frigid cold, but that doesn't stop us.
That shakes out the lightweights.
Yes, it does.
And do you have rotating sites where you go for your?
Yes, we do. We started out primarily having our shoots in Iowa while we worked out the legal issues in Nebraska. Once we worked out those issues, we have a number of sites in Nebraska that we also shoot at.
What kind of a budget do you have for an activity or for an event?
We really don't have a budget. Basically, this being a club of mostly amateurs, a lot of them will actually build their own fireworks on site the day of the shoot, and then we'll go shoot them at night. Sometimes we have organized shows in addition to people just shooting off fireworks that they built during the day. Sometimes it's just kind of a slow-paced, hey everybody, watch this shell that I built, and we'll stand around and critique it after it's done and maybe decide what could have been better, what worked well.
So it sounds like any special interest group, that those who have the most interest in it organize and really enjoy themselves. And
yes.
And do you do things for the public ever, or are you accessible, or?
We do have shows in areas where the public can view them. For the most part, you know, if you're within viewing area, you can see the fireworks we shoot.
Anybody can look at the sky.
Yes.
You don't have to be a member to look at the sky at night.
Right. We don't really put on any public shows like the small town fireworks shows or anything like that. I say most of us are in it as a hobby, and if you start doing it as a job, then it becomes a job and it's not quite as much fun.
And then you have more liability.
There probably would be additional liability. As I said, we do carry our own insurance, our liability insurance that covers anything in case of any kind of an incident.
What do I suppose most of the guys who like this, but what do your wives think and your girlfriends think about this is a hobby?
Most tolerate it. Some actually enjoy it and do get into it as well.
And your kids come along some of the time?
Yes. We do have some time for you know, Class C consumer fireworks, and one of the things that we do as a club is we try to promote the safe use of fireworks.
Talk about that for us.
You know, every year we hear about incidents involving fireworks where people get hurt, and in most cases it's because someone is using fireworks improperly, and that really puts fireworks as a whole in a bad light. And so one of the things we try to do is promote the safe and proper use of fireworks. Anytime anyone in the club is shooting any type of fireworks, they are required to have eye protection. That is one of our mandatory rules. And we always adhere to safe distances from the shooting area to spectators, even if that's, you know, other members that are just viewing. So safety is really always at the top of the list of things that we're watching for.
I can see how a consumer might not have the patience to do all of that. Goggles, I mean, looking at instructions at night.
And sometimes it can be a little inconvenient.
Yeah.
Yes.
But Brian, what's an example of a more interesting thing or a more unusual thing the club would build than what the public might see ordinarily?
Well, I think one of the things that differentiates our club from a normal public fireworks display is some of the effects that some of our members will create. Some of them will spend hours or even dozens of hours or more building a specific shell or a type of effect. One of those, for an example, would be what's called a girandola. which is essentially a flying saucer type device that is built with rocket drivers that cause it to spin on a spindle, and then after a delay, a series of vertical drivers will kick in and it will actually send it up into the sky, and with a proper effect you'll have a corkscrew of glitter or sparks trailing behind it. Some of the larger ones that we've seen in our international organization, the Pyrotechnics Guild International, have reached up to 14-foot diameter and come back down to the ground via parachutes so they don't damage any property or people as they're coming back down.
4th of July is coming up. This is the big time of the year, isn't it?
It is. And you know, as I've mentioned, I'm in it more of a hobbyist. So usually the 4th of July, I'll spend with my family doing consumer fireworks. You know, that's one of the times that my kids get to light fireworks, and they do enjoy it. And I think a lot of the other club members are the same way. We do have a few of our members that are in the business and actually will be shooting shows.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you can get your materials to build your things readily enough.
There are online companies that do provide the various chemicals. The chemicals by themselves are mostly common chemicals, and then it's actually the process of mixing them and making them into some type of fireworks. And those types of activities we typically do on site so that we're not transporting anything dangerous to and from the shoot sites.
So you guys know what you're doing with it and how to use it and how to use it prudently.
And if someone is doing something that others feel is unsafe, we're always there to point it out, and you know, we're always looking out for each other to make sure that everything is safe.
Brian, I want to thank you for being our guest today on Live and Learn. It's a very topic thing. Summertime, patriotism, red, white, and blue, eat hot dogs, go home with all your fingers when the party's over.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Brian, very much. I'm Tim Francis. Remember, it's never too late to live and learn.